conversation around kickers and what kickers are. You want a kicker to have the opposite movement, right? So what can I see here? I see that Dollar Tree was moving up yesterday. The next day it opens. Here, I can mark the open for you, right? If we can read candles, we should be able to do that pretty quickly with our eyes. So it was bullish yesterday, right? We're moving up. There was some selling, so this is not the best kicker, but this is still a kicker, right? There was a bit of selling, but ultimately we moved up on the day, and the next day we have gapped down. What does that mean? That means everyone who is buying is screwed, right? They're out of luck. That's a kicker. A kicker is the next day open is gapping in the opposite direction of the previous candle. Now, there's also needs to be conversation around what that previous candle looks like. Here, we had quite a bit of selling. So that's why I said it's like, maybe a kicker, but that's all right. We can live with that. A better example of a kicker is a good friend, Walmart. Look at this. Bullish. Extremely bullish, right? Then we open here. Well, I guess that says entry. Right, so we were bullish, we're pushing up, and we gap down. There was very minimal selling on this candle. Everyone that's long, everyone that's bullish here, what this was the earnings, yeah. So whatever the earnings did, it screwed them, right? They have to get out. That is a kicker, right? And we call it a kicker because it's kicking people out with aggression, right? That's what a kicker looks like. This here is not a kicker, right? This candle down, they were already selling. They were selling. So a gap down, that's not a kicker. This is just a gap down, okay? Oh, and this would be the open. Right? So there's difference between a gap up, a gap down, blah, blah, blah. Like, all kickers are gaps, but not all gaps are kickers, right? So this, if they were already selling that day, they just gap down. So you're like in profit. The same thing happens to the upside. You just look at NVIDIA or AMD's chart and you'll see gap ups, right? Those are not kickers. Kicker is when it is opening in the complete opposite direction of the previous candle and there is minimal selling and or buying for that candle, right? Because these people were like having a great time. Like they ended the day in strength and then they opened the next day screwed, right? So I'll show you some examples of what is not a kicker. This right here, so if this is open, right, we sold all day. Gapping down is not a kicker, that's a gap down, right? Sold. These people who were selling all day are very happy, they're very pleased, they don't need to get out of this. It'd be smart to take profit, but there's not like a panic, right? This sends you into an absolute frenzy. You held, you're looking good, held into strength, and then you open down, and vice versa, right? It can be you were selling, and then they open up, and everyone's buying, right? But I just want to be super clear. This is not a kicker. This, from here to here, is also not a kicker. This is just a gap up, right? Because they were buying this whole day, and in the morning, they gapped up, which means they bought overnight, kind of thing. Right? And I also want to mention, super important, that your kickers look a little bit like this, right? Minimal selling on that side. I wonder if I can think of a downside kicker. I don't see one right off. This almost opened as a kicker. I think I remember mentioning that. Yeah. Because they sold all this day, and you can see, right, like no wick on these cells. It's just barely any wick. Had it opened above the previous day, that would have been a kicker. It moved like one still, but this was not a kicker. This was a gap and go. I just wanted to show you that like it does happen to the downside as well. I'm trying to think of another one. But yeah, like it's really important to note that on kickers, you want a big body candle and you want very minimal wicks. Very, very minimal. Because even this, like they went down, but then they bought up, right? You can see how much they bought. So this is not like, also it didn't gap the open. So I'm trying to find, of course, it's really difficult to find things when you really want them. But I hope that makes sense. Just like, what is a kicker? Because lots of chatter in the chat, and it's like that's not quite there. I want to make sure that we're talking about the same things correctly. I'm trying to find one just now, but I don't see anything that's just jumping out at me. But yeah, that's what a kicker is, and I hope that makes sense. Like, that's as simple as I can come across.